Hi, I'm Jade for the most part, and I am a protector and a trauma holder in Collective Mind, and I'm going to try to ground essentially by filming a video about flashbacks, and we're going to see how this goes. Nobody else who's around is affecting me that much, I don't think, but if that changes, I'll add pictures and stuff in the corner. Especially since it's, for the most part, just the usual front crowd of Aura, Josh, Raven. So first for the basics, what are flashbacks? It's a trauma symptom where you re-experience a trauma memory or part of a trauma memory as though it is currently happening. It's related to how brains function during trauma and how they don't store that information properly as a memory, and so it's different from just remembering something. Even if that something is negative, it is your brain actually processing it as though it's happening right now. And that's true even for partial flashbacks. Even if you are still somewhat grounded, the part of it that you're experiencing feels like it's happening right now. Flashbacks are often triggered by reminders of the memory. The trigger doesn't always have to be apparent, especially to outsiders, but even to the person having the flashback, they might not know what the trigger was. And triggers don't always cause flashbacks, they can cause other things. For instance, in a system, triggers can cause switches without causing flashbacks, etc. But trigger is also a general term used for all kinds of things, including like triggering a physical flare-up for our physical disability, triggering certain kinds of emotional state, and so on. Flashbacks are also different from hallucinations. It's different brain mechanism, and it doesn't respond to treatment like medications or anything that would be used for psychosis or hallucinations in general. In terms of types of flashbacks, a complete flashback would be the whole memory in terms of all of the components of the experience: sensory, visual, auditory, all of it, emotional. You can be partly grounded during a partial flashback, but that's a lot less likely for a complete flashback because it is taking over all of your senses like that. So unless it's more like an overlay kind of, where it's like you're experiencing both, it's a lot harder to be still somewhat grounded during a complete flashback. For us, at least, if an alter holds part of a memory, we would still, at least in some cases, consider that a complete flashback, especially if it's all of the components of part of what happened during that trauma. Like, say it's all the sensory, it's all the visual, auditory, everything, but for a specific category, like if there were a couple different types of trauma that happened really close together or something, and one alter holds one genre of it and another holds the other genre of it, they could still have a complete flashback of their part of the memory. We might also still consider it a complete flashback if it's an alter who holds a very small, specific fragment of a trauma memory, but will be completely overcome, essentially, by that flashback still. So they're completely pulled into it, like to the same extent as they would be if they had access to the rest of the information from that memory. But there are a lot of types of partial flashbacks, such as like sensory or partial sensory. A very common one is physical flashback, physically feeling whatever the flashback is about. There can also be emotional flashbacks or like mindset type things. We often will call some of that, especially mindset things, more of like a trauma response, like it's triggering a trauma response of how we would have handled that type of situation, for instance. Like it can trigger a very specific mindset in a protector, for instance. But you could have a partial flashback where you're just like having part of the auditory or part of the visual, or like it can be broken into all of the different parts essentially. But there can also be very different intensity levels of a flashback. You can have, or at least we can have, almost like more of a background, kind of muffled flashback, and it can ramp all the way up to very high intensity. This can depend a lot, like it's easier for it to be more muffled like that if it's partial. In our case, like for instance, it can feel more muffled if you are emotionally dissociated from it, but still experiencing a partial flashback of one or more of the other components, especially if you're still somewhat grounded generally in what's going on. I have lower intensity partial flashbacks very often. They can also vary a lot in length. They can last a long time or be fairly quick. It just depends a lot on what the flashback is about, for instance, but also like how long it takes to replay the whole memory. But you can also get stuck in a flashback for longer than that. Like it can loop or even just loop part of it, or you might not even have the whole flashback if it gets interrupted in some way, or if you got triggered about a specific part of it, or you manage to ground before it's done, things like that. They can also be cyclical to an extent. Like, this will happen for us a lot too, but a flashback that keeps pulling you in essentially even after grounding, where it's like you can't pull yourself quite completely out of it, and it just keeps, like if you're not actively still doing something to ground even for a couple seconds, it starts pulling you back in. And like I've referenced a few times already, it can vary a lot in how grounded you are and how much other awareness you have of what's going on in the present and outside of that flashback. But it can also vary quite a bit on how covert or obvious it would be to other people around you. There can absolutely be flashbacks that are very visible, very audible. You can clearly tell something's wrong, but they can be much, much subtler than that and very covert in a lot of cases. I have had flashbacks on live streams that were probably not noticeable. I've had flashbacks in front of family members, all kinds of people in my life who didn't realize. So digging into that a little bit more, how they look from the outside will drastically depend on a lot of factors. The type of flashback, how grounded you are from it, if at all, the memory itself, and the trauma responses attached to that memory. From person to person, people just respond to flashbacks differently and at different stages of their own like healing journey and things like that. It can depend on the context, like what else is going on in that moment in the present. For instance, something that can happen a lot with us is other triggers can prevent our flashbacks from looking certain ways. The most common one for us is if we are around other people, we have a fairly consistent trigger to mask, at least to some extent, and that will make it much less likely for our flashbacks to be visible at all. The level of amnesia and dissociation can change how flashbacks will look, and also in systems, other alters affecting things can change it a lot. And as I've started saying a few times, most people won't notice most of our flashbacks. Even if they notice something, it might just look like dissociation, or like we're tired or getting a headache or something like that. Like we've just gotten a little quieter, that type of thing. Even if the alter fronting is the one having the flashback, we might just get quiet, like I said, or we might even be able to continue the conversation as normal through a partial flashback. This is especially true because we have that trauma response to mask, especially of triggers and trauma symptoms. We are starting to be able to drop that mask more in specific contexts, and more of it shows in those contexts because of it. But there are also people who know us better, and if they have seen unmasked or less masked flashbacks before, it might be easier for them to see some of those same early signs, even if we are masking, things like that. There are also absolutely times where we can't mask all or part of it. The biggest thing I think is important to keep in mind, and that I don't think I really see people talk about online, is that you can't see a flashback in someone else. You can only see their reaction to it. So if they aren't outwardly reacting to it, you can't see it. You can't see the things that their brain is doing. It can also be very deeply ingrained not to react. And some people, especially with long trauma histories, have a lot of practice with that. The other important point that I would say to wrap this up is that a lot of trauma symptoms don't involve flashbacks, but those can still be horrible, and none of it should be minimized ever. It's doing really good. Alright, I'm gonna wrap it up. We did not in any way pressure Jade to film right now. She did not have to. It was her choice. It did help her ground for a little bit, but she was having a partial flashback consistently the whole time. It's a rough time of year for us. And it was starting to pull her in a bit too much at the end, so I'm gonna finish. But thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful in some way. And we have all of these things below me listed in the description, and having a little trouble holding the front, but I have some help from inside. And we're definitely going to take a break after this before potentially trying to do a live stream, but we'll see. These things can be grounding, and we did film first as a test, essentially, before doing something live to see how it would go. But this was a video that was important to us that we've had planned for a while, and we were waiting for the right opportunity to film it, so we're glad that we got it done. But thank you for watching, and check out all of those things in the description if you haven't yet, or in case there are any updates there that you might not have seen. We're going to be starting to work on trying to get back on top of our Etsy soon. Hopefully we're behind on updating things there, but we've been having a little bit more trouble knitting and crocheting lately with some physical stuff, so we're going to see how that goes. But at least getting more on top of the things that we have already made and making sure they have listings up and that those listings are up to date and all of those things. So keep an eye out for that. I think you can set notifications on our Etsy shop if you want to make sure you see when we add anything to there. And as of filming this, we have a medical procedure tomorrow that we think is going to be a fairly short recovery time, and this is filmed in advance to go up like half a week after that. So as long as we can edit it during that time, that should work out. And by the time it would be time for the video after this, I am pretty sure we will be recovered enough that we could be filming and things again. So that's the plan. But thanks again for watching. Bye.